As we acknowledge God's presence here and now, as in everywhere and every time, let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be open to the awareness of your presence here, now. As we invite the awareness of your presence here, we are lifted, we are opened, we are primed for blossoming in this moment. Holding this awareness, our hearts extend out to each and every one in this room, to each and every one on this planet. We acknowledge the pain that so many are feeling. We acknowledge the burdens that so many are carrying. We acknowledge the fears that so many are experiencing. And we recognize your love is the answer to all of those. So in the awareness of your presence, we open to the awareness of your love, and we extend that love here into this moment, unconditionally, without expectations, without applying a burden to anyone in this exercise. We breathe in your love, we breathe out your love. And we accept this responsibility to be the conduit of your love in this moment. And for this awareness, we give thanks. And so it is that together we say, Amen. Well, are you prosperous yet? Of course. Okay. There's one person that's pretty definitive about it. How about the rest of you? Yeah, so, maybe. All right. So what's your definition of prosperity? My talk relies upon your feedback.
Having everything you need.
Everything you need? Okay.
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind?
Waking up every morning. Waking up every morning.
Waking up, everyone?
Every morning.
Every morning. Waking up every morning. Got it. Right side of the dirt. No toe tag. That sort of thing. Okay. Toe tag. Okay. So what is this experience of prosperity for you? What when you say that I am prosperous, how does that feel? What does that mean for you?
Feeling good about my life.
Feeling good about my life. About your life. But I'm quoting you, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Comfortable.
Comfortable.
Having enough to share with others.
Having enough to share with others.
Having faith
Having faith in what?
that everything's provided in the universe. You
Okay.
just put it out there.
All right. Not having faith that breakfast is on the table, but something broader than that. Okay. All right.
Surrounded by people that love me.
Okay. All right.
Well, that I have enough and I am enough.
Okay. That's an interesting second part, right? Yeah. Okay. Glenn?
A good database of knowledge.
A good database of knowledge. All right. Google's good for that, right?
Gratitude.
Gratitude. Okay. All right. Well, good. You all are doing well. You all are prosperous. We'll take an offering for unity now. Okay, so this experience of prosperity, I mean, the colloquial definition of prosperity talks about houses, talks about bank accounts, talks about stock portfolio, talks about the child's education being paid for, or children's education being paid for. Those are the colloquial definitions of prosperity. And in Unity, we certainly acknowledge that that is something that at least exists out there on the planet, and maybe we still have some connection with those. Maybe that's our definition, but we're too afraid to bring that up here in this esteemed company of August consciousness. So, in the colloquial definition of prosperity, there is an underlying message. Can you infer what I'm thinking? That underlying message in the colloquial definition of prosperity. I've got enough. I live in a nice house. I've got a good view. I've got a nice car. My children's education paid for, or at least it's set aside. I got money in the bank. I've got a great 401k. So what's the underlying message there? Money, 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 money. And what about money? What is money? What is money? Money is purchasing power, right? There's money in and of itself. You really can't benefit from money in itself. You benefit from the peace of mind that it brings, right? Supposedly. I certainly know, and you all probably do know, people who live comfortably, but there's no peace of mind that's associated with that, right? I mean, there's the striving, there's the accumulation, the grabbing for all the gusto you can so that no one else gets it, or at least before someone else gets it. So the way that we often get hooked into thinking about prosperity is related to this issue of whether or not we have adequate funds, whether or not we are living comfortably, whether or not we have what we think we need to get on in this world. Well, I'd like to offer for you that the underlying message in the colloquial definition of prosperity has to do with fear, right? Avoidance of fear. Not being afraid of whether or not you're going to be able to make the mortgage payment this month. Or perhaps even more basically, not being afraid that you're not going to have enough food on the table for your family this month. As I'm looking at my post-ministry years, the question come up, okay, so what am I going to do? I'm a doer. I have a difficult time just laying back and saying, wow, this is Sunday, and gosh, I don't have anywhere to go today. That's going to be a big adjustment for me. So I didn't hear. What was that?
I said you could be like us, go to church.
Oh, I could. I have a feeling that that's not going to be top of my list. I don't know, maybe. But that wasn't in my set of alternatives that I was considering. Okay, so I just had a conversation with a good friend of mine who was a minister and no longer is. I won't speak of her gender because that might give her away. But she was telling me that in the time since she's been retired, she has attended church maybe half a dozen times. And this is not 6 weeks ago that she retired. This was several years ago that she retired. And so there is something about ministers retiring. If they stay in the same place, it's recommended that they not attend the church that they were ministering at, right? I mean, that makes a lot of sense because of all the dynamics that could occur. And if they haven't moved, there may not be any alternative ministries that they would be, Methodism probably wouldn't work, Catholicism probably wouldn't work for a unity minister, First Baptist probably wouldn't work for a unity minister. So in some cases, it's difficult for unity ministers to actually attend church where they would feel comfortable and not be prone to stand up and say, "That's all wrong!" So turns out in this area that is not a problem, but we're actually considering moving to somewhere not nearly as populated as this. So we'll see. Anyway, back to the topic. What was I talking about this morning? Oh, prosperity. Okay, so we have Charles Fillmore did a fair amount of thinking about this question. Ah, there it is. Our new one has a different shape, and so it's... Okay, so Charles Fillmore offered this in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. By the way, I just want to put a plug in for truthunity.net. If you are into metaphysical interpretation, truthunity.net is an online resource that has all kinds of great unity materials. Mark Hicks has done an excellent job of providing this material to us. So, in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, okay. Well, that's not. I'm going to step down here. Sorry, Patrick. Okay. So, the consciousness of divine mind is inexhaustible support and supply. The difference between spiritual prosperity and the material idea of prosperity, which I've talked about as colloquial prosperity, is that spiritual prosperity is founded on understanding of the inexhaustible, omnipresent substance of spirit as the source of supply. The material idea is that the possession of things constitute prosperity. Man lays hold of the one substance with his mind through understanding and faith. Uncertainty of riches indicates putting one's trust in the possession of things apart from the consciousness of this one substance as the source of all. Anxiety about supply can be overcome by recognition of the omnipresence of spirit substance and a centering of faith in it as the one source of supply. The one substance is magnified and increased by thanksgiving and praise. One's conversation should always, ever, magnify the spirit of plenty. It is necessary to give as freely as we receive because there is a law of giving and receiving. Giving opens the way to a greater inflow of substance. We should give cheerfully, freely, out of the consciousness that supply is inexhaustible. Going back to your definition of prosperity as being that which you can share. So the idea that Charles Fillmore brings forth, and of course many unity writers that have followed Charles in this line of thinking, is that prosperity is a matter of consciousness. It's not a matter of things, it's not a matter of the material world or the possessions that are contained in the material world, but rather it is a matter of consciousness. And when I spoke of the underlying message that undergirds the colloquial or material definition of prosperity is that the fear that we have surrounding lack it's cancerous. It infects and it spreads. It becomes part and parcel of the whole worldview that we have. That there exists a tangible lack that we in fact want to avoid. And so the spiritual idea is that it is in consciousness where we assume, when we assume, that is, we acquire our prosperity. It is in consciousness, and it is through the lack of fear that we assume that prosperity. In the Daily Word today, we speak in the second paragraph, belief in lack or limitation dissolves as I accept my Christ nature. Divine life revitalizes my body. Divine love harmonizes my relationship. Divine imagination shows me new possibilities. Divine wisdom and understanding guide my decisions and actions. Divine faith strengthens my commitment to transformation. These divine characteristics of wisdom and love and harmony and so on, that is an aspect of our... Let me back up. Those characteristics are not something that we acquire. They are something that we assume. That is to say, we have the opportunity to take on a prosperity consciousness without any shift, any change in our material experience. Would you agree with that? Because it is just a shift of consciousness that is the shift from a consciousness of lack to a consciousness of prosperity. It's just in consciousness. Okay? And the presence of fear is the linchpin, the glue that holds the consciousness of lack in our consciousness. It is the fear that we hold that keeps us from really believing, really experiencing that we are prosperous regardless of what that material account looks like out there. So it's up to us not to try to acquire more, but rather to assume more, to bring into our consciousness this reality that the underlying source of our prosperity, of our abundance, is this realm of substance out of which all material things arise. And so Charles Fillmore spoke in many different works across magazine articles, in several different books. He talked about how do we shift our thinking from the exterior material account of prosperity to the interior consciousness account of prosperity. And he talks about assuming the divine imagination and divine wisdom and divine faith. A Course in Miracles talks about prosperity only tangentially. That is, if you go to A Course in Miracles book and you search for the word prosperity, you won't find it. Right? And the only place where you find rich or words that we normally attribute to prosperity, as it talks about a richness of consciousness, a richness of awareness of the presence of God's love. So when we look at these characteristics of my apologies. So when we look at these characteristics of the divine that we are attributing in the daily word, that is all about the dissolution of fear. And A Course in Miracles is really clear about how we do that. I offer it to the non-Course in Miracles students to respond to that. You've heard me talk about it. What is the recipe for the dissolution of fear? Love. Unconditional love. Unconditional love. Unconditional love is actually a channel. It is a channel that runs directly from the heart of God, and I'm anthropomorphizing God here to make this point as an image, running from the heart of God through us. And that channel is all about carrying all of the wisdom, all of the characteristics of the divine through us into our experience. So divine wisdom and divine imagination that's mentioned here in Daily Word, that's just a sidebar of unconditional love. As unconditional love flows through us, what we're receiving is we're receiving guidance. We're receiving inspiration. We're receiving divine ideas. That travels along that conduit that unconditional love is. And so when we look at the divine characteristics of wisdom and imagination and harmony and faith, yes, all of that is part and parcel of what we are receiving as we allow divine love to move through us. So when we are looking at this question of, am I prosperous? Let's first ask the question, am I loving unconditionally? Am I experiencing unconditional love by my choice? Not because someone is giving it to me, but rather because I am open to it and I'm allowing it to flow into my experience. If I am allowing it to flow into my experience, that will be my experience. That experience of unconditional love is really a choice that we make. It's not something that we have to acquire out there. It's not related to the balance sheet of our material wealth. It is related to our decision that I am going to, in this moment, respond with unconditional love. I'm going to respond to the person who is aggravating me in unconditional love. I'm going to respond to the person who is torturing me in unconditional love. And that can be very difficult sometimes. And I experienced here this morning that my response was not unconditional love. It was a response that was more of my human nature. And so it's not something where we do it once and we say, oh, got that, okay, I'm good. But rather we have to practice it. 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 And so, yeah, that was a good reminder for me that I need to increase my focus on practicing unconditional love, regardless of what stimulus is out there. I need to be willing to say, regardless of what happens, I am here as a conduit of God's love, and with no expectations, with no conditions, with no contract, where if I give this unconditional love, I'm going to get something back. It needs to be unconditional. And that practice is something that we continue. We continue. Like a doctor hangs a shingle and says, I'm practicing medicine. Well, it's something that is ongoing, right? I mean, until and past their retirement. It's an ongoing thing. When a lawyer practices law, it's an ongoing thing. You can't practice law and then suddenly give up the practice. I mean, that's not good for your clients. You can't be a doctor practicing medicine and suddenly say, okay, I'm not going to practice anymore. Practicing unconditional love is in that same vein. It is something that we do continually, and it is something that we're challenged by continually, but don't let that be a problem. Step up to the challenge. Step up and say, okay, I'm here. I'm God. I'm expressing as God right now. And that's the Christ nature that we realize. That's the Christ nature. And when we express that, when we realize that Christ nature, when we make it real in our experience, when we realize that Christ nature, what we are doing then is we are moving into each situation, into each affair, into each circumstance in a way that you are glowing. In fact, the original definition of glorified is the radiance, right? The radiance that comes from the enlightened one, from the ascended one, from the one who recognizes and expresses their Christ nature. We can all do that. It's in each and every one of us, right? It's in each and every one of us. Are we going to resolve to evolve? You bet. We're going to do that, right? Yes. Yes? Yes. We'll have our meditation. As we come into our meditation, let's take a couple of deep breaths. Breathing in, filling up, pausing, and letting go. Pausing, breathing in, filling up. Pausing, letting go. As we allow our breath to lead us into this quiet space, sloughing off those things that we have carried into this moment. We allow this moment to be pristine, open, untainted. We allow this moment to be a God moment. As we receive this unconditional love moving through us, we notice that as we are experiencing this unconditional love, fear does not reside, has no foothold. Unconditional love, the expression of God in this moment, it's a powerful medicine. One that truly transforms us. It is all we need to be truly happy, to be truly prosperous. The dissolution of fear is our choice, and unconditional love is the remedy. Breathing in and breathing out, opening ourselves as conduits of God. In this act of expressing unconditional love, we are loved. We are loving. We are the messenger of God in this moment. And who could ask for anything more than that? Loving God, loving our neighbors, practice, practice, practice. And in this awareness, we give thanks. As we come back into this time and space, let us come back sharing the words of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be will take an offering for unity now. As we take our offerings in our hand, let us bless them with this offering statement. Together, please. Divine love through us blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give in love because I trust in God. And once again, Trinity Damask in irreverence.
Don't be afraid. Close